Thanks for coming back for another video on leadership in IT. What I'd like to do today is to talk about a little known law, at least not a little known by its name anyway. It's called Brooks Law, and it's named after a man who wrote a book in 1975 by the name of The Mythical Man-Month. In a chapter by that same name, the Mythical Man-Month is defined as the relationship between the amount of effort put forth and the amount of progress being made. He observed that project managers would follow a path that they would get hours from their programmers. Those hours from their programmers to do specific tasks would tend to be optimistic. They would tend to take a path of everything's going to go right. In other words, the happy path, so to speak. In taking the happy path, they would assemble this wonderful schedule that would put together this womb to tomb project look. It's going to take this number of hours. The schedule lays out such with the hours that we have available to us and the personnel that we have available to us. Therefore, the project's going to take a certain length of time. The project manager then begins to equate the number of people with the number of hours that need to be done and the amount of progress that is going to be made. Once those things are all tied together, they get gelled into a thing that Fred Brooks calls the Mythical Man-Month. He says, hence the man-month as a unit for measuring the size of a job is a dangerous and deceptive myth. Now, why would he say that? Because it seems logical when you're putting together a schedule that, of course, the number of people you have assigned to the project and the tasks would then equate to the number of hours they could put in, which would equate to the number of hours that have been estimated, and therefore here's our schedule. Well, when all those are tied together neatly, what happens when a project goes sideways a little bit? A task takes longer, or many tasks take longer than originally estimated. We get to a situation then where the project manager, of course, who has really equated the amount of manpower to the number of hours that need to be worked and therefore the amount of progress, the project manager will be looked at by management, and management asks that wonderful question, what help can I give you? Well, managers are there to make sure roadblocks are removed. But usually when it gets to this point, what the manager's really saying is, can I give you some more manpower in order to make this thing go and a little faster and get back on schedule? And we know that managers, especially the functional managers that don't understand programming very well, will then want reports in the morning and possibly even reports in the morning and in the afternoon. And the project manager then has to prepare for each of those meetings, and then they spend an hour in the meeting explaining what's going on and informing management so they can inform the upper management so they can get more budget. And here we're in this wonderful spiral that tends to make the project perform even more dismally. So what's really happening here? Okay, in the chapter, The Mythical Man-Month, Fred Brooks basically says there are three main factors. And those three main factors, when you bring a new person into the project, is assimilation time, training overhead, and communication overhead. Well, let's talk about the easiest one, the communication overhead. If the programmers have to communicate with one another, which of course they do, it's a creative endeavor, and programmers that don't communicate create bad projects. So if they have to communicate, if you have two people, and now you add, let's say you add two people, you double the amount of manpower, it should go twice as fast, right? Well, let's look at it. Just in the communication factors alone, two people have one communication line, but four people have four communication lines. So you've got one person needing to communicate with three people now, and those one persons have to communicate constantly. So you've got more communication lines, therefore you've got more time spent in communication time. Now what about assimilation? If the person hasn't been part of the project up till now, they've got to have time to get familiar with what the project is doing, where it's at, how they're doing it, what methods they're following, all of these things so that they can get in there and work. The other thing, training overhead. What if that person needs to be trained on the software that they're using to develop the new software? Or even training to know what progress they've made and how the other modules that have already been written function and work, so that they can be able to tie their new modules into the project. Part of what creates this mythical idea of hours mean progress is the fact that if you are building a bridge, let's say, and during the building of the bridge they fall behind schedule, well, they underestimated the complexity possibly of the welding or something like that, they can just put another welder in there. They can just put another mechanic in there. They can just add somebody to them because the communication between them is the same. They communicate with the project manager, they get a blueprint, and they go do the work. So when you're talking about adding labor to normal physical projects, and not creative ones, physical projects, you can add manpower to quite easily. And the logic in the minds of managers is that, of course, you should be able to add people easily then to any project. Well, software is quite a different matter. And those people out there that are kind of snickering saying, well, we do Agile, you're right. Agile recognizes that hours don't equate to progress. And so if you're doing Agile really correctly, let's say in a Scrum environment, you're measuring the amount of work that gets accomplished on a weekly basis by a team. And each Scrum iteration then begins to average out the amount of actual accomplishment rather than the number of hours spent to accomplish those tasks. So Scrum seeks to solve this problem. So the Mythical Man-Month is averted, and you can see what these teams are doing. Now, that doesn't mean that Brooks' Law doesn't apply to Agile, unfortunately, because adding a person in that environment still may have training overhead. It still may have assimilation time in order to accomplish it. But an Agile run program tends to still do better than a waterfall program in this particular situation. So I hope you've enjoyed this explanation of Brooks' Law. It's still applicable today, despite other surveys and other studies that I've seen around trying to say that it doesn't exist anymore or isn't a problem anymore. It still is. And managers and project managers still have to be aware of the challenges that can present themselves when new people are added to the project, when it's in flight or getting close to the end. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I want to thank you so much for coming and watching this video today. There's a lot of other great content that you can explore on this channel. In fact, a link to one of them is on the other side of the screen here. Also, please take a few moments to subscribe to the channel. It'll keep you informed of new videos as they're posted, and you can keep up with all the great content that's being put out here for everyone to enjoy. We'll hope to see you again later.